Hello everyone, this is V and I'm here to show off a game I just finished and I thought it was very interesting, so I'm going to tell you what happened here. Uh, we are playing as Indonesia. I settled where I spawned on a desert tile because of a limited amount of useful tiles in the neighborhood. I could have moved here to the hill, but I didn't think it was worthwhile to do so at the time. In retrospect, perhaps that would have been better, but this way I had 4 wheat, which is really good for growing. Unfortunately, of course, the rest of the tiles was not that great, all just regular plains. Um, I expanded in this direction pretty early on because all of this was Babylonian territory. So around turn 30 I think I settled Surabaya and got a complaint that I was forward settling on him because Gurigalzu was already here, but I needed the terrain. There wasn't enough room to put more cities here. Babylon started raising an army. There were about, I think, 15 units by turn 60. They were swarming around Surabaya, but mostly they were approaching the capital. I just finished a settler and I sent it down to Medan. This was an excellent area. It had a number of sheep. It had multiple salts and the Mount Kailash, which is a really good natural wonder. I got deer and silver from it. And Quebec had a few tiles only here, so I bought the rest. Making this a pretty good city. And then Makassar was founded a little bit later, but I fed it with multiple food trade routes to grow it pretty quickly. This was around turn 100 right after finishing the National College. So the Babylonian invasion, a lot of units. I built early walls in these two cities. They ignored Surabaya completely and I had just Jakarta with a composite bow, Surabaya with a composite bow, and I had 2 more composite bows around Medan, hoping to get them in a sort of pincer when they went for the capital, which they did. So they were around Jakarta and then suddenly their supply lines got cut. They tried to attack it, but unsuccessfully. And eventually I destroyed all of the units and pushed them back, but I was unable to take the city because I was, well, first of all I was in problems with happiness. I had nothing left at the time because I had no religion. I had 4 cities and a very limited number of luxuries. I had not met anyone because I couldn't pass here with a boat, and in the south Sidon was an ally of Babylon, so I couldn't pass there either without getting destroyed, and that war lasted for too long a time. Eventually I met the Greeks. Well, that wasn't too long a time actually, so that's okay. And the Greeks were going crazy. They expanded like nuts, as you can see from the map. They conquered everything. They conquered Susa. Well, entire Persia was conquered by them. So they had all that. And then the Shoshone went nuts on this side of the map. They conquered all the city-states in a war with the Greeks, and they also conquered Polynesia, they conquered Attila, and they conquered Germany. I'm not sure where the German capital was exactly. Here, Berlin. So that was rather dramatic. And it's been, well, a very long time since we are with just 3 major players on the map. I pushed back Babylon. I actually think that Sidon was taken over by the Greeks, and then I paid the Greeks to attack Babylon later on, but that story will come shortly. So, in the stalemate here, I decided to grow as much as possible. I made sea trade routes between these cities and between these cities, making them grow as much as possible, because Surabaya on its own, it didn't really have that much land. It didn't have these 2 tiles because Babylon took them, and basically I only had this and the deer and 1 fish. So growing was not all that easy, but the food trade routes helped. Production wise, it wasn't that great either. I managed to get the Colossus in Jakarta. I can show you. I got the Colossus. I eventually got the Eiffel Tower. I built the Big Ben because of commerce and the Hubble Space Telescope at the very end, but I didn't really have anything else spectacular early on, so not that great. Growing, at least, was no longer a problem as soon as I got a few fates. Allowed me to buy pagodas. You can see this here. I'm lucky that they spread it to me, so that's great. And I was intending on conquering the world, because I didn't think I had much options. I was way behind in tech, I think at some point 10%, but then I got sucked into autocracy. The Greeks were pretty powerful over me reasonably early on. Look at their influence. It was 30% before I got an ideology, and I was already flirting with the limits of happiness, so I really had to follow autocracy. I saved up for a bunch of bombers, you can still see them here, and a bunch of battleships. I improved these oil tiles and then went to town on Babylon, conquered these 3 cities and allowed him only Sidon. And then I made sure that I built all the science buildings here to catch up with Greece. Eventually that worked, sort of, and I kept paying Greece money to engage in wars, so that they were occupied. I put as many spies in their cities as possible, even though they weren't stealing anything. I was never going to take back the city-states. They are well under Greek influence. Look at this one. Zanzibar 1073 influence, 1068. You can imagine that this is not possible for me to ever take back with money. 1204. So the diplomacy was gone. The conquest soon appeared impossible because nuclear non-proliferation was passed, and I still only had a little bit of oil, I think 11 total, and I just did not have the culture output at that time. I have 373 now, but that's because I conquered Babylon, and it just wasn't gonna happen. I wasn't gonna get enough policies. I was going for the 2nd tier double resources, but it was too late. I had to fight too much for happiness, and with this many salts but only 2 possible trade partners, I actually only had Greece to trade with because the Shoshone were, well, hostile towards me, so I could only trade away 1 salt for 1 other luxury the entire game. And this means that I was constantly struggling with happiness, and that also means that I spent a lot of my tenets in happiness modifiers. So yeah, and that is that. Of course, I completed rationalism quickly, or well, as quick as I was allowed, because I still had to take happiness things to keep growing. So I finished this to take the last technology up here, particle physics, so that I could research these while I built the engine. And then I bought a few scientists with faith, popped them to get the other technology, and basically that way I could catch up with Greece in the very end, because they have the same technologies as I do. They also have, well, 95%. In the end, Greece started working on the engine as well, and I had to declare war, because without it he would race me to it. I'm not sure. I think he switched. Yeah, SS engine 8 turns, as you can see, but before I threw all these nukes that was 2 turns, and that would have been 1 turn ago, so I had to nuke him, but I cannot win a war with Greece at this point. Not sure I can negotiate peace, no. But he has so much real estate that I just can't beat it, not even with a few stealth bombers, because it just keeps coming and coming. I have spent 3 turns and several nukes. I bought the nukes before the non-proliferation hit and kept them around for just this scenario. So I kept them in store on this ship here. I nuked Athens, I nuked Knossos with 1 and then started bombing it, but the turn after, this is now 3 turns ago I think, he swarmed with this many units. I killed a bunch of them, he swarmed again, and I assume that he can keep doing this at infinitum. So we just don't have the means to fight him. We don't really have the resources either. I could make 2 more stealths, because this map is very low on resources for some reason. I have 3 aluminium here, and I think that's about it. Is there any other? Don't see it. Uh, Either way, that's the story of this game, and I got very lucky, I think, because well, I managed to outrace him. I think Greece spent a little bit too much time on the war technologies, and perhaps I was stupid not settling here, but I only know of this area for the last 100 turns or so, and by that time I just didn't have the happiness to settle that, because the 4 from the whales just wouldn't cut it. That means it can be size 1, and then perhaps 6 more from happiness things, and that's just, well, would have cost me much more than it would have gained me. By the time it would have grown to negate the 5% penalty from having extra cities. So if I had gotten these early on, that would have been great, but as it was at that time, I don't think it was worth bothering with. And well, that's pretty much the story of this game. I thought it was very interesting because of the space race with autocracy and minimal conquest, because I only took 3 cities and 2 city-states, and the city-states are more of a burden than anything else, but I had to take them out to prevent a diplomatic win for Greece, so I was forced to do this. And well, that's just about it. That is the story that I wanted to tell. I hope it was informative, and it just goes to show you that even with huge empires against you, uh, it's still possible to win the space race with an autocracy build, uh, even if you don't fully focus on science early on. And that's why I think that science is more or less the default victory condition in this build of Civ, because it's probably the easiest one to get. Easier than diplomacy because you need so much votes, easier than conquest because, well, that needs a lot of dedication, and definitely easier than culture because that requires complete devotion to it. See you next time, and I hope you enjoyed it.